Most people don't realize that financial stress is treated by the body like any other physical threat. When money is tight, your body kind of activates its stress system. Your cortisol is going to go up, your blood pressure is going to increase, your sleep is going to get disrupted, and your appetite's going to go up. You're going to be hungry for more sugar and for high fatty foods. A 2022 report done by the APA Association stated that the number one stress for adults is money over work and relationships. Chronic stress from finances leads to increased abdominal fat. It's going to slow your metabolism.
Welcome back to Midlife Unleashed. Happy New Year. I'm so happy to be back with Doug and to such a good episode about midlife and money. Perfect timing for the new year. So, we've talked about strength, metabolism, habits, mindset. But today we're talking about something many midlife professionals don't really connect to their health, which is money. So if you've been worrying about finances, retirement, leaving a legacy, or just kind of feeling like you're behind, you're not going to sleep well, you're going to stress, your hormones will act up, and everything else you're doing will be harder. So Doug's here to walk us through how financial wellness really ties into physical wellness and why managing both really gives you an edge in midlife and beyond. So I'm, like I said, excited to be back. Hi, Doug. How are you?
Good. How you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I think this is such an aligned conversation with the new year, and people are thinking about health and money. So I'm excited to dive in.
I'm looking forward to it too, because again, two of the top resolutions are always related to money and health, right? And so this should be fun. Should be fun.
Absolutely. All right. So, Doug, let's dive in. So, why do you believe that financial stress shows up in physical health, especially in midlife? And beyond that, what kinds of health patterns do you happen to see in people when money is tight or even uncertain?
Well, most people don't realize that financial stress is treated by the body like any other physical threat, right? And so when money is tight, your body kind of activates its stress system. So your cortisol is going to go up, your blood pressure is going to increase, your sleep is going to get disrupted, and your appetite's going to go up, right? You're going to be hungry for more sugar and for high fatty foods. And so a 2022 report done by the APA Association stated that the number one stress for adults is money over work and relationships, and chronic stress from finances leads to increased abdominal fat. It's going to slow your metabolism. It's going to increase inflammation. It's going to wreck your sleep. And so we already got these hormone changes going on in midlife, but we're also, some of us are supporting kids. Some of us are helping parents. Some of us are thinking about retirement. You got peak work stress or career stress, and, you got peak financial responsibility. So financial stress literally becomes physiology.
It is interesting because when you think about finances, stress comes to mind almost instantly. It's obviously a cause of stress, but somehow you don't always really think about that really affecting your health. So it is kind of interesting to correlate those two together.
Yeah, they're very much intertwined.
Absolutely. And what was maybe a financial worry that you saw ruin someone's progress, but then when it changed, their health actually turned around too?
You mean in terms of a health goal or stress?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I've seen that plenty of times. You're probably too young to remember the financial crisis of 2008.
Remember that?
Yeah, okay. So there was a lot of funny loans going on and a lot of different things going on during that time. And I had a client in my personal training studio. I was training. She was working two jobs. She wasn't really sleeping well, but her nutrition, believe it or not, even working two jobs, was spot on. And she was very consistent with her workouts because I was training her, and so, it wasn't the diet or the exercise. What actually changed was when she was able to refinance that mortgage, and that took $800, put $800 more in her pocket on a monthly basis. So when that happened, her sleep improved. Obviously, her stress hormones came in more in line, but for like the next 2 months, I mean, her weight just was dropping effortlessly, and so the only thing that changed was that. And so that was eye opening for me because that showed me just how powerful stress is. And then that's why in my Perfect Scale program, we include stress management as part of a weight loss program because, sometimes it's not the meal plan, right? It's more of like the mental load. So you got to address stress. But that was a situation where I saw financial stress have a direct impact on somebody's results.
Absolutely. That is such a drastic amount of money to have back in on a monthly basis. A lot of money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, after the second month, she quit the second job. So that alone gives you more time, less stress, you know. So it finances play a huge part.
Absolutely. And many people, I feel like, especially in midlife, say or feel like I can worry about my health after I fix my finances or vice versa.
Yeah.
So, why is that mindset almost backwards in a way? What does a healthier narrative around money and wellness really look like?
Yeah, don't do that. Because that's a trap. That's like, I call it like the double delayed trap. People think they can fix one area while ignoring the other. But the problem with money and health is that they are literally intertwined, right? If you're burned out, if you're inflamed, if you're under recovered, if you're exhausted, you don't make good financial decisions, right? Impulse spending is going to go up, right? Your avoidance goes up, right? Your debt cycles deepen. It's your risk tolerance even gets distorted. So when your money's a mess, it kind of impacts every component of wellness. Your sleep, your stress, your hormones, your energy, inflammation. And so that's not a good way to kind of manage that situation. I think a better way would be to say, I manage them both because they're both important and are going to determine the quality of my life, right, in the future. And so you can't just look at one and ignore the other. Financial wellness is a form of self care, right? And it's a wellness category that no one's really talking about, but it clearly is a big component for self care. And those people that manage it in their health end up doing very, very well in terms of their longevity
Absolutely. Because when you do
and
think about
quality
it,
of life.
even what you said about impulse spending and all these daily things that go into financial decisions all day long, of course, can have such a huge effect on your wellness, but it's something I don't think is talked about enough in that regard. So,
Sure. Well, they're talked about separately,
exactly. Yeah.
and people don't really get the whole, macro view
Mhm.
and see how it definitely impacts. Both of them impact each other.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
if you had to pick one shift in money thinking that would help someone's health the most, what do you think that would be?
Probably to move from like a reactive money thinking to a proactive money behavior. Right. So go from reactive to proactive. Like the reactive is like, I hope this works out. Right. And that very seldom works. for anybody, right? But the proactive is like, I have a plan. And that's the mind shift, set shift. That's going to lower your stress and that's going to increase agency, which is one of the strongest predictors of longevity. So that's probably, I mean, that's helped me, and I think when you're reactive, you're just taking the blows and you're not really in control. And even when you have a plan, it may not be the best plan, but at least you got a plan. So you feel like you're in control. And that's real important in terms of keeping the stress kind of down.
Absolutely. And you've recommended health habits that are low friction. Can the same be said for financial health in that way? And what are some maybe micro habits around money that midlifers can really start today that would support their health too?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that micro habits work for everything. So they work for your health. They work for money too, the same way. A couple things I'd recommend. And it's funny, we're having this conversation and we're talking about money, and the audience knows me as the fitness professor, and they know that I'm a college professor, but actually I teach mostly personal finance. So these little micro habits I'm sharing with students on a consistent basis. They're not, most of them aren't midlife. They're young 20s and 18-year-olds, but still it's great to be able to pull some of that information from my classroom into our conversation today. But the first thing I would say is like a 5-minute money check-in, just like a 5-minute morning stretch, right? You got to open up the bank app. You got to look in there. You got to see what transactions are going on, and you got to get your eyes on reality, because the research shows that avoidance is the biggest factor with chronic financial stress. So you got to address it, just like you got to address your health. You got to look at it, and that 5-minute look in periodically is always good, just like, a 5-minute morning stretch. I like to say, just automate something, whether it's savings, whether it's investing, whether it's paying down a debt or a bill. Like, automation takes the decision making off the table, just like meal prep takes the food decision off the table. So the less decisions that you have to make, the better off you are, and the more energy and thought you can put into some bigger decisions. And while we're talking bigger decisions, the other thing I would say is a 48-hour pause or a 48-hour rule on purchases, right? Because that will stop that impulse spending. It's going to reduce your guilt. It's going to make you feel better about the long-term financial stability that's created just by practicing a little delayed gratification. And we have to do that with eating the same way. We can't just go out and eat all the things that we want to eat all the time. Sometimes we need to take a pause and say, hey, that's not for me right now. So that helps. And then, I think a weekly, monthly meeting with yourself, like you do meal prep on a weekly basis. This is just a money mindset prep, and this will help to kind of lower your cortisol and increase the sense of control that you need for your nervous system to relax. And then that's going to help bring that stress down also. So there's a lot of little things you can do. It doesn't have to be like a whole overhaul, but you just do the little things and get some wins. And then next thing you know, you're doing big things.
No, that's so smart. I love the 48-hour pause too, because I have heard 24-hour pauses. That's something I've tried to implement because I can be impulsive. Instead of running on to, next day Amazon or just instant, like you said, instant gratification, taking that pause and waiting for it. But those are all good tips.
Yeah. The problem with the 24-hour pause is that for most people, it's not 24 hours. They think about it at night and then they go to sleep and get up and go to work on it, and do it and make the purchase. That's not even a 24-hour pause. So at least with a 48-hour, you're going to get a minimum of 24 plus hours in there,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I'm always taking notes with with all your episodes. Like those
Good.
small habits do have such a big impact for sure.
They do. And especially the automation of things. Again, I found that that helped me because I didn't have to think about things, right? And if you can automate some things, no matter how small, like I said, whether it's saving, investing, or paying off a debt, if you start to automate it, that creates consistency, right? And we all know consistency solves all problems, right? And it's required to solve all problems. So yeah, there's a lot of little things you can do. Don't always try to knock it out the park. Just get a little hit, get a little singles, put them together.
And is there a tool, mindset, or even a habit that you suggest for someone feeling overwhelmed by finances and by their body?
Um, a tool per se for both of them, like a My Fitness Pal, a My Financial Health Fitness Pal, or something like that. Um, None that I recommend, or none that I know. I would say, what if someone's overwhelmed with this stuff, the best thing you can do is just lower the altitude, right? Most people try to fix everything at once: their diet, their budget, their workouts, their debt, their macros. Like, that's overwhelming. And it's too much to try to fix all at once. So what you want to do is just pick one lever in those categories and just fix it, right? If it's health, then hydrate, right? If
Mm.
it's mindset, then do 60 seconds of some deep breathing, right? If it's money, then automate something. But when you're overwhelmed, you build momentum by just shrinking the problem down into something that's winnable, and then do that. And we all love winning. And so once you start the winning, then you just start stacking those wins on top of each other. But that's the way that people handle it and get into a good situation. There really is like no one tool or something that you can do that's going to solve that problem, because it's going to be a series of things.
Mhm. But one thing at a time pretty much sounds like the best way to kind of tackle things without being overwhelmed by too many things.
Yeah, but small. But small, it's the New Year's, and people have got all these resolutions, and like you can't go all in on all the resolutions. But if you can hit a low lever in each, so that, okay, well, I did this, and then, okay, well, I did this. Well, next thing you know, you're 4 steps above where you were, and you're feeling good, and momentum's working on your side, and here you go. You know.
And health isn't just about longevity, it's about what you leave behind as well. So,
Mm.
how do you help clients connect their wellness to their financial legacy and purpose? And what's the story they want to leave their kids or community?
Ooh, that was a lot. That was a lot. But I know when people think of legacy, they first go straight to money, right? And legacy, and I understand that, because that helps propel that next generation up, right? It kind of speeds things up for them. But it can be more than that, right? Legacy can be energy, it can be values, it can be behaviors, right? Right. You can leave your kids wealth, but you can leave them wisdom. You can leave them healthy habits, right? You can leave them a model of how to manage stress. You can leave them a model of how to take care of themselves, because financial health is part of the story, but so is physical vitality. Right?
Mhm.
Okay. You don't want to retire with money, but no mobility. And then you don't want to leave your kids, with assets, but also medical debt. So when your health and your money align, which is the goal, right? Because I told you they're intertwined, you show up differently, more intentional, purpose becomes the fuel, you're more present, calmer. It's just a better place. But oftentimes when you hear legacy, it immediately goes, to money. And keep in mind that we're leaving a health legacy too. you know, and where we are today may be based on the health legacy that was passed down to us, you know.
Absolutely. No, it's such a good point. And when someone's health and money align with purpose, what kind of energy or behavior change do you observe from your end?
Their decisions become sharper, right? Because they're not chasing now, they're creating, right? They gain energy, and not like Red Bull or caffeine type energy, but they get energy from clarity, right? It's incredible how much energy is freed when stress is removed from health and finances. Okay? So if you can get the stress out of those two, that opens things up to a whole entirely different world. A lot of energy there, because a lot of energy gets spent stressing on those things, you know? So just imagine if you didn't have to do that, or if that wasn't part of your existence, how free you would feel, and what that could do for you. It's something that I wish for everyone.
Absolutely. And that just
Mhm.
made me think about what you said about automating things, because even the energy about making a decision can take up so much mental capacity and energy. And I know that on my behalf because I will overthink a decision over and over. And just that thought alone, if you automate something, even that one thing is taken care of. So it's
It's
less.
it's it's the decision making's off the table. You know, sometimes we have to realize that we have to save ourselves from us, right? Right. And so one of the best ways to do that is just to automate. Just get it done. It's done automatically, and it's out of your hands. Because when it becomes back in your hands, then you start to get all emotional and all these other things get involved in. And, that ultimately is stress too.
Absolutely. And Doug, I know you've spoken a lot about fitness and transformation, but what's one time in your life where you had to make a tough financial decision that really impacted your health, or vice versa? And what did you learn from that experience?
Um, Man, I've had several. And I mean, I've taken a calculated risk when I opened my first personal training studio, when I expanded them, when I started a obstacle course race, and we were doing a 5K obstacle course races up and down the East Coast. Where I started Connecticut Medical Weight Loss line, created Massey, um, all of those financial decisions, impacted my health, because, as a entrepreneur or as a business owner, you start a business, you have a new baby, so here comes stress, right? Here comes sleepless nights, or, your
Mhm.
sleep gets impacted. And when I was young, man, I just go without eating, and, I would skip my training to train other people. And so my health was very much, negatively impacted. I no longer let my health get so much impacted, but it does. I mean, your stress and your sleep gets impacted. But, what I learned was when the financial decisions aligned with my personal mission, that the stress was temporary and the growth was permanent. Okay. Every time I ended up being a better or growing into the person that I desired to be. But that's when you got to make sure that the financial decisions are aligned with your mission. When they're not, then you got problems. You know, but ultimately, what I found out is the stress was worth it. My health improved because I was living more, again, in alignment. And I think that's the key part. But we've all made financial decisions that impact our health.
Mhm.
That's why I said those two are intertwined, right? So you can't think you're going to make a financial decision and it's not going to impact your health. It just it doesn't work that way. But the key is, if it's aligned with what you want, then ultimately, you're going to be in a better position in the long run. But you got to know that. and you got to know how it's impacting your health, right? That's the check-in. And then you just got to work to, you know, overcome it and stay the course and, deal with what happens when you make difficult financial decisions. I mean, it's part of life, you know? So yeah, they're going to impact your health. Just don't let them kill you. Now, I'm joking. I'm joking.
You have a point.
You're going to have some setback health wise, but ultimately it should be a springboard for where you're trying to go, and that's when you get the benefit.
And now that you are where you are, what's the one financial habit you practice today that supports your wellness routine?
Probably a monthly money review. Right. Every month I do my body composition analysis on my metabolic scale. I want to know exactly how much muscle I have, exactly how much fat I have. I want to know all the numbers, and I look at it on a monthly basis, and I do the same thing with the money, because when I look at it, it kind of grounds me. It sets the focus for the month, right? It reduces stress, and it puts me like in a leadership position, or at least a leadership mindset, so that I'm not being reactive in relationship to it. So, that's the one thing, that I brought over from my health component of looking at my numbers on a monthly basis to make sure that there's no, dives or anything or identify things that I need to address. And doing that with money does the same thing. It does the same thing for me.
No, I think that's so smart. I know I want to incorporate that, because just having that visual, that reset, especially on a monthly basis, that you're just checking in on everything. And like you said, it eliminates the avoidance, which is one of the bigger contributing factors. So
yeah, and it puts you in control. Even though things may not change much from month to month, right? Most of us get paid on a bi-weekly or some sort of basis. And, at midlife, you got some investments for retirements and you got some other things going. But looking at those buckets on a monthly basis, I found really helps me to feel in control. And I do the same thing with my health. I look at those numbers on the body composition every month. I don't want to wait 6 months. I don't want to wait a year, right? I want to catch it while I can and feel like I'm in control of it.
Absolutely.
I just think that the key is to look at these things like they work together. And, when I've seen people who've got it together, their health is much better because of their finances, and their finances are a lot better because of their health, and so it's real key to keep that stress down so that you can use that energy elsewhere.
Absolutely. No, that's so smart. Doug, so today we unlocked a piece of midlife wellness that rarely gets talked about, but it really makes all the difference. So I know I'm going to incorporate a lot of these things. I needed to hear this. So I always love talking to you, because I feel like I always learn so much. But, health isn't just about how you feel. It's how you live, how you plan, how you leave your mark. So if you're listening and you're ready to get financially and physically fit at the same time, share this with someone who needs a wake-up call, because midlife isn't just about living longer. It's about living stronger, smarter, and with purpose. So share this with anyone who can really learn from it and benefit from it, which is pretty much everyone, especially those in midlife. And thank you again, Doug. I was so happy to talk to you today. I can't wait for our next episode. I know
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. It was great talking to you, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Be well.